Hi, my dear friends. Some words of Torah for Parshat Vayigash. We sometimes think the worst of others, even when our accusations are completely unfounded. Our malevolent thoughts are usually the product of some insecurity or darkness within ourselves, which prevents us from giving the other the benefit of the doubt. The brothers thought the worst about Yosef, that he was out to control and dominate them. When he first came to them with his dreams, he wanted to share with them a vision of an ideal future where he would be the center of a unified family. He saw it as his duty to provide guidance and hold the family together. The brothers resented this greatly and rhetorically responded to him, Hamaloch timloch aleinu, im mashol timshol banu, will you govern over us? Will you dominate us? But Yosef's objective was never to control his brothers. He rather viewed his role as the great consolidator. We're all familiar with the sibling who exists in every family who holds the family together, especially in larger families. There's usually one family member who's responsible for setting up the WhatsApp group for the rest of the family, make sure that they stay in touch with everyone, and does their best to make shalom whenever there's broigus within the mishpacha. The fact that they saw in Yosef malicious intent when there really was none helps us understand some of the peculiarities in language immediately after Yosef revealed himself to his brothers. After the great reveal, Yosef tries his best to mollify his brothers and assuage their guilt. Hashem only sent me here to provide sustenance both for Egypt and for my family in a time of need. He then says to them, and this is in verse 8 of chapter 45, Ve'ata lo atem shalachtem oti hena ki ha'elokim. You didn't send me down here, God did. Vayisimeni la'av leparo. He has placed me as an av, as a father for Paro, ula adon l'chol beito, as a master over his household, umoshel b'chol eretz Mitzrayim, and as a ruler over all of Egypt. Now, what's the difference between these three words that imply leadership? Av, Adon, Moshel. They all imply that he's a leader, so why use three words when one will suffice? Furthermore, we note that Yosef told his brothers that when they got back to Canaan, they should say to their father, and this is in verse 9, Ko amar bincha Yosef, so says your son Yosef, Samani Elokim le'adon l'chol Mitzrayim. The Lord has placed me as an Adon, a master over all of Egypt. Come down to me now and don't delay. Why did Yosef choose the word Adon and not the other two words when communicating with his father? Finally, when the brothers finally did convey the message to their father, note how they did not quote Yosef accurately, but rather switched his words. Vayagidu lo lemor, it says in verse 26, they told Yaakov as follows, Od Yosef chai, Yosef is still alive, v'chihu moshel b'chol eretz Mitzrayim, and he is a ruler of all of Egypt. Why did they switch Yosef's use of the word Adon and instead use the word Moshel? Let's understand the difference between these three words. When you're an Av, literally means a father to someone, it means that you're there to give them loving advice and guidance, just as a father provides tutelage for his son. Yosef was instructing his brothers that he had won Paro's trust and was a respected and beloved advisor to the king. And Adon is something different. It usually is used biblically when creating a class contrast between the master, the Adon, and the slave, the Eved. It is a position that demands respect and assumes that others will submit to the master's authority. Yosef was therefore communicating to his brothers that he was respected by the entire royal household as being their superior. And the third term, a moshel, implies not just someone of a higher station or authority, but also someone who can force his subjects to do as he pleases, even when it means that the subject must sacrifice his or her own comfort and possessions. The Abarbanel explains that by selling Yosef, the brothers had falsely accused Yosef of trying to best them in three ways. Yosef informed the brothers that not only were their accusations not true, but that Hashem had elevated him in those same three ways in relation to others. Firstly, they were jealous of Yosef being the favorite child of their father, and by selling him, they sought to destroy that close bond between Yosef and Yaakov. But instead of destroying Yosef's familial connections, Yosef was able to gain a new familial bond between himself and Paro, and that Paro viewed Yosef as a father figure. Secondly, the brothers detested the prospect that while they would be working out in the field for the family business, Yosef would be the pampered child of a higher station in the family and would instead stay inside with Yaakov instead of working outside in the field with them. Instead of destroying Yaakov's aristocratic master status, Yosef became the master of Paro's entire household. And finally, the brothers thought that Yosef wanted to rule and control them against their will. But instead, Yosef became the controller of the entire Egyptian population. In reality, the brothers were mistaken on all three fronts. Firstly, Yosef wasn't vying to be the favorite child. He never wanted to lord over his brothers and occupy a higher station than them, and he certainly didn't want to force them to act against their own will. He rather wanted to unify the family while still remaining their loving brother. By pointing out to them how their malicious misreading of his intentions against them all backfired, he was teaching them an important lesson in divine retribution. If you try to impugn another with false accusations, Hashem will eventually allow you to see your opponent's successes in those very areas where you thought the worst about them. Yosef sought to communicate to his father that he wasn't a dictator, even though he had the power to be a moshel, a completely dominating ruler, and force Egypt to submit to his rule. He rather chose to be a benevolent Adon, someone who was respected because of his higher station within the social order, but not someone who forced others to bend to his rule. He wanted his father to be proud of whom he had become, and that he was still the same gentle, sensitive, and unimposing Yosef, who, despite rising to great power, still practiced benevolence and kindness to those under him. This is why he told his brothers to tell our father that I am an Adon, just a master, not a moshel over Egypt. The brothers, however, whether consciously or subconsciously, superimposed their original view of Yosef when bringing back the message. Recall that they had accused Yosef of seeking to dominate them. Will you rule over us? And so when relating to Yaakov what Yosef's station was, they couldn't help but blurt out their dark fear that he was the moshel, a ruler with absolute power over his subjects. The Torah relates that Yaakov initially didn't believe them when they told him that Yosef was alive. Perhaps it was because he knew that the Yosef that he had raised as a boy was too sweet and refined to be a dominator of men. He therefore made his sons tell him verbatim what Yosef had actually said, and then he saw the wagons laden with lavish gifts for the entire family and the great expense that Yosef went to make sure his father would be comfortable on the journey back to Egypt. This is the Yosef I know, not the moshel described by my other sons. An aristocrat, perhaps, but not someone who seeks to suppress others. You know, we live in a world where we communicate through the written word at least as much as through the spoken word. It is so easy for our words to be misinterpreted and to be imputed with malicious intent. It's important for each of us when we receive an email or a WhatsApp that seems provocative or belligerent to read it again through more charitable eyes. Maybe what is being said is not as mean-spirited as we think. Perhaps if the person spoke the words instead of texting to us, they would sound completely different from the way the words play harshly in our minds when reading them off the printed page. Let's not allow our own insecurities to feed our fears and suspicions about others. Of course, this doesn't mean we should be naive. Kabdeu v'chashdeu, both honor and respect a potential opponent, is the way our sages phrase it. But when we have no reason to read malevolence into someone's words, we should take every opportunity to give them the benefit of the doubt. We should also remember that in times of tension and turbulence within society, our words can be easily misinterpreted, so we should take the extra moment to explain ourselves with kindness and patience. May our efforts at kindness to others, both in deed and in assumptions of motives, bring us closer to the redemption, dear friends. May we see it b'mheira b'yameinu, amen. And here's wishing you a wonderful Shabbat Shalom. All the best to you.